Again, good afternoon. Good afternoon, Bonifacio. So, for today, we are going to study conditional sentences. So, when we speak of conditional sentences, these are the sentences that are used to talk about things that can only happen in or under a certain condition. Okay, that is why it is called conditional sentences because there has to be a condition before a certain thing happens. Okay, and conditional sentences are made up of two clauses: the if clause and the main clause. Okay, the main clause is also known as the independent clause, which we also know as the standalone clause, and this clause can form a complete sentence standing alone, having a subject and a predicate. So it's called an independent clause because it could stand on itself. On the other hand, the if clause or the subordinate clause, also known as the dependent clause, is typically introduced by a conjunction that forms part and is dependent on the main clause. See? So our if clause is also known as subordinate clause or dependent clause. So unlike independent clause, this kind of clause cannot stand alone, and the if clause functions to speak of the condition. Since we are studying conditional sentences and we have said that when we speak of conditional sentences, we speak of things that are only possible to happen under a certain condition. Okay? So, for example, we have if I were a boy, I think I could understand. Sounds familiar, right? Right. So, in this sentence, our if clause, our subordinate clause is obviously the if I were a boy, I if I were a boy. Yeah, that is our subordinate or if clause, our dependent clause. So, by itself alone, it has no complete meaning because the meaning of this clause depends on the independent clause or the main clause that we have, which is in this example is the I think I could understand. So here we could clearly see that this clause, the main clause, could function as a sentence. There is a subject, there is a predicate, and there is a complete idea. Okay, so a if clause is also known as our subordinate or dependent clause, and the other part is what we call the independent clause. Also, take note that if a word or the word if introduces the subordinate clause, there is always the if. After the if or the words after the if is always part of the dependent or the subordinate clause. And it is the one that states condition. So what is the condition of the sentence? If I were a boy. If I were a boy. So that's the condition. And what will happen if you are a boy? I think I could understand. Okay, so the result of this condition is the main clause. Okay, so this is the condition, the first part, if I were a boy, and then the result would be the main clause. Okay, also notice that whenever the if clause comes first before the main clause, there is a need for a comma. But if ever you are to write, no, you are to write a conditional sentence, putting the main clause first, you don't have to put the comma anymore. And I know you also have that on your LP, so you just have to review that. All right, so conditional sentences, let's go back to the title page, are also known as conditional clauses or if clauses. That is what I'm already telling you a while ago. And they are, again, used to express the action in the main clause without if. Okay? Can only take place if certain condition in the clause is fulfilled. So the main clause, again, for example, this one that we have here, will only be fulfilled if this is the condition, okay? If the if is given. Okay, so the if clause expresses the condition and the main clause expresses the result. And there are four types of conditional sentences. And we call the first one the zero conditional sentence. Okay? Or the zero conditional type. This type states certainty or something that really happens. Okay? So when we use zero conditional sentence whenever we are stating some condition that is absolutely true. Okay? Something that really happens in real life. And the format to follow to construct conditional sentence is the if clause and the main clause are both in present tense. Okay, they are both in present tense. The if clause that you have there and the main clause are both in present tense. Okay, since we are talking about something that really happens. Okay, we are talking about something that really happens. Therefore, the format, okay, that we are to follow, the if clause and the main clause are both in the present tense. For example, if it rains, the ground gets wet. So technically, we are stating a factual statement. Okay, whenever we are doing factual statement, we are using zero conditional sentence. Facts. Okay. The example that we have here, you see here, there. If it rains, the ground gets wet. All right. It is automatic. But really, that if it rains, the ground gets wet. Obviously, diba? Di naman porket malamang pag umulan, mababasa yung daan, di ba? So, if that is the condition, this will be the result. And so your conditional speaks of something that really happens. Okay? Something that automatically happens. Okay? For example, the classes starts on, if it is Monday, we have classes. Okay? It's Monday, we have live teaching, so that is true. That is based on our schedule. That is factual. So our if clause is in present tense. If it rains, the verb is in present tense. Rains, the ground gets wet. They are both in present tense. Okay. Zero conditional sentence. The if clause and the main clause are both in present tense. Present tense. Okay. We are talking about something that is factual. You all factual. All right. Next to this, we have what we call the first conditional sentence. Now, this kind of condition states a real possibility in the future. So we aren't talking about a real fact, okay? Something that we are sure that is really happening, something that is not changing, something that is not something that is constant. Here we are talking about something that will happen in the future. Okay? That will happen in the future. And our if clause, the verb is in present tense. In our main clause, we have what we call the present modals, the has and the have, and then the base form of the verb. Or present modals, okay? The anything, will, may, might, can, okay? So, for example, if I graduate early, I might find a decent job. So here, our if clause is in present tense, graduate. And the main clause, I might find a decent job. So here, this is the condition, okay? And if this is the condition, this one is the real possible result. But I want you to remember, hey, we have here present modals. Mom, you told us before in our class in modal verbs, in our discussion with modal verbs, that modal verbs do not have tenses. Technically, they don't, but as I have told you before as well, there is always exception to the rules, and because of the development of language, we can consider that these modal verbs are in present form. Okay, so If I graduate early, I might find a decent job. So we are talking about something that could really happen in the future. Okay? A real possibility in the future. Another example is what just like what is written on your LP. If I find her address, I'll send her invitation. Kung mahanap ko siya, bibigyan ko siya ng invitation. That is a real possibility in the future. Okay? If this is the condition, if I'm gonna find her, then I'll be able to give her or send her the invitation. Also, if I have money, I will buy this car. So that is a real possibility. That if it is a certain given condition, it will surely happen. Okay, it will surely happen. Also, again, I want you to remember it is written on your LP, no, that our clauses may change in possession. There are times that the main clause comes first before the conditional clause or the subordinate clause. And in that case, you don't have to use comma. Okay, so you could also write the example, if I have money, I will buy this car for you. Like, I will buy this car for you if I have money. Okay, necessity still serves its purpose and still follow its format. Okay, that the if clause is still in present tense and the main clause has present modals plus base form of the verb. Also following the rule number 1 in modals that whenever we use them, the main verb is in its infinitive format or base form. Next to first conditionals, we also have, of course, if we have first, we have second conditional sentence. Now, this one is a complete opposite of the first condition. Okay, so if the first condition states a real possibility in the future, the second condition is a complete opposite. It states an imaginary present or something that is not happening today. And of course, if the condition is imaginary, the result would be unlikely as well. Okay, so uh, it is something that will never happen. And the format is past tense in the if clause, past tense of the verb. In the main clause, you have past modals, then base form of the verb. For example, if you wrote a book, it could sell 1,000,000. Obviously, the goal of the sentence is to state an imaginary event which is impossible to take place. Okay, impossible. Why? Because the present is imaginary. Another one. If I jump, I could reach the moon. That is impossible. All right. So whenever you are stating something impossible, you are expressing your imagination. The condition that you are going to use is second conditional. Right? We use second conditional sentence whenever we are expressing our imagination. And the format is past tense of the verb in the if clause, and then past modals and uh, past modals and base form of the verb. Okay? So in the first conditional, we are expressing a real possibility, something that could happen in the future. In the second condition, we are uh, expressing something that will never happen. You see that? Will never happen. So it is a complete opposite of first conditional sentence. So again, we have zero conditional that is expressing factual, okay, factual conditions, factual results, something that is not changing, something that is constant, something that really happens. That if it is condition, this will happen automatically. Second condition, first conditional, the second type that we have. First conditional talks about, okay, this is the condition, these are the possible results in the future. Okay, something that could possibly happen. On this third type, the second condition, we are trying to give imaginary situations. Okay? imaginary condition. So if the condition is imaginary or unreal now, something that is not real now, obviously the results would be imaginary as well. Something that will never happen. And lastly, but not the least, we have what we call the third conditional sentence. Now, this one, okay, this one states an imaginary past. Okay, conditional states an imaginary past. It deals with things that you wish didn't really happen or expresses regrets. So, one thing that you should know about this is when you are expressing something that you are regretting, okay, something that you wish you never did, something that you wish never happened, you use third conditional sentence. Okay, so the if clause have had plus past participle of the verb, then the main clause have past modals, have, and then past participle of the verb. Okay, so example, if I have stopped loving you, I would have felt happy by now. Okay, this sentence is expressing one's regrets. That if only he had stopped loving that person, he would have been happier. So you get that? If only I had stopped loving you, I would have felt happy by now. So you are now expressing how much you regret that you loved him or her. Okay? So you are wishing that these things never happened, really. Okay, the third condition is used to express all things that you regret, something that you wish never happened. For example, if I had reviewed my lesson, I would have passed the test. So that could be a statement if ever you had a test, you did not review, and you failed. Okay? You could regret not reviewing your lesson and say, if I had reviewed my lessons, I would have passed the test. Okay? So, again, to wrap it up, we use conditional sentences if okay, we want to we use conditional sentences if we want to state a condition and a result. Okay, and there are four different types of conditional sentences. Sorry, my nail polish is green. That is why it is like that. Yeah. Oh, we have four. I do have different color. Okay, we have four different conditions. The first one, the zero conditional states of something that is real and factual. Second one, stating a condition that could happen in the future, possibility. Third, we have the second condition that is expressing the impossibility. And fourth, we have third conditional sentence that is expressing regrets. Okay? If you have any clarifications and questions, you may feel free to message me and send me your concerns. All right? Thank you so much.